Chapter 10. Maggie stood alone in the corridor outside the 6th grade classroom of New Adelphi Hills Academy and ran her eye along the row of labels over the coat hooks on the wall. Alyssa, Barbara, Gregory, Sharon, Catherine P. Robert, Howard, Catherine M. Carolyn, Edwin, Randy with an I, Diana, her new classmates. She looked at their jackets all puffed with thick stuffing and all stitched with little emblems from ski resorts. Alyssa's was green, and at an opening in a seam, a tiny feather stuck through. Beneath it, side by side, stood 2 perfect leather boots with carved designs. Above hung a striped stocking hat with an enormous pom-pom. The weather had turned suddenly cold and damp, and winter clothes had been brought out, for the first time in the season probably. The corridor smelled of camphor and musty closets. Caroline's hook also held a long yellow scarf with foot-long fringes. All the girls had the same kind of hat, all of them. Long wool pull-ons with huge pom-poms, some green and blue, some red and black, one, the nicest, violet and lemon. They hung one beside the other like a string of pennants on a ship. Maggie lifted the violet and lemon one from its hook and pulled it over her head, swinging it around so that the pom-pom banged against her ears and then dragged on the floor like an elephant's trunk. Inside, the teacher was explaining Maggie's situation to the boys and girls in her class. There hadn't been time to warn them that there would be a new girl arriving that day. Maggie had been brought to school at the wrong hour, and so she was asked to wait in the hall while everybody was getting the lecture teachers always give about being kind to newcomers, especially when they were like Maggie. She ran her foot along the floor molding and gazed at the row of clothing spread across the wall. Hat, jacket, and boots for Alyssa. Hat, jacket, and boots for Barbara. Jacket, no hat, no boots for Gregory. Just like paper doll outfits, and Maggie thought now of the little paper dresses and coats, each with a name imprinted on the shoulder tab, that her old roommates would attach to little cardboard boys and girls in monogrammed underwear lined up along the windowsill. What would they be like, she wondered, the real boys and girls who belonged to these hats and jackets on the wall. Slowly in her mind, she gave each outfit a body, filling in a face under each hat, a pair of hands below the sleeves, legs above the boots. Alyssa would have short curly hair that she would shake a lot and smooth brown scab clinging like a polished beetle to each knee. Barbara would have a lovely wire band across her teeth and a thick braid that she would swing around like a rope. All the girls, in fact, would shake their hair a lot. Diana would have a fringe of bangs, and she would sometimes shake and sometimes blow from the corners of her mouth, scattering it across her forehead like a row of startled hens. Robert would have a fat, buttery face and creased wrists, and Gregory would have a face like a rodent's and small, powerful fingers, with which, in 2 weeks' time, he would twist Maggie's arm into vicious burns. There were no extra coat hooks, Maggie noticed, and that meant that somebody would be asked to share with her. Randy, the teacher would ask, I know you won't mind sharing your coat hook with Maggie, and Randy with an I would remain silent. No, she wouldn't mind. She'd be happy to have her shiny, down-filled jacket with the embroidered ski patches make room for Maggie's brown wool coat with its misshapen sleeves and uneven hem. She would love to leave her violet and lemon hat nestled next to Maggie's brown beret with its peeling leather band and torn school emblem. Randy with an I would be Maggie's first enemy. Little fragments of the teacher's voice were drifting into the hall, and Maggie tightened her ears against them. The speech was one she didn't care to hear. The teacher would be explaining to curly-haired Alyssa and rat-faced Gregory and butterfat Robert and everyone else why it was necessary to be considerate and thoughtful of Maggie. Maggie has had a great deal of trouble in her life, she would say. Teachers loved to tell about Maggie's trouble, especially the part about her mother and father. Both her mother and her father have passed away. They always said passed away. Then she'd start in on all the schools Maggie had been to, leaving out the part about how she'd been thrown out of each one. Maggie has been to many schools with other customs and other rules, so she may appear a bit different at first. Different was another word teachers loved. Maggie is a different child, when hateful was what they meant. Next would come the part about cooperating. I know you are all eager to cooperate in making Maggie a happy member of the class, happy member of the class when she'd get to the part about how they should all treat their newcomer as they would want to be treated themselves, and she'd use a whole lot of words like ethical and understanding, and everyone would grow solemn. And if Alyssa and Barbara and Sharon and the two Catherines and Carolyn and Diana were like the girls in all the other schools Maggie had ever been to, they would be nice to her at first. Except for Randy, whose clothes would have to hang next to hers on the coat hook. They would all actually like to being nice to her. They would treat her as though she were Mary Lennox from the Secret Garden, suddenly ushered into their midst and needing to be looked after. Girls always liked being nice to the new girl, especially if she had a great deal of trouble in her life. They would even fight over who was to be her partner on the way to the lunchroom and who would show her the way to the bathroom. Outside at recess, they'd all cluster around her, and Alyssa would tell her how nice her clothes were, her brown school skirt, with a glistening grease stain along the hem, and her tan blouse with its split underarm seam. And one of the Catherines would pick her first when they were choosing up sides for a game. It was always the worst part of going to a new school, the time when everybody tried to be nice, but it never lasted very long. In a few days or weeks, everybody would begin to hate her and be happy at last not to have to feel sorry for her anymore. Pretty soon, maybe in 2 weeks, she would stand alone on the playground where today she would be made first player on the team. Groups of girls would form in the corridor, on the playground, in the lunchroom, and she would hear her own name, Maggie, then a laugh and silence. Someone would imitate her walk, and now and then she would catch sight of her name on a note passed across her desk to someone on her other side. Later they would grow bolder, and finally her clothes, the same clothes that they would admire today, would be inked up in her desk, smeared with glue. It was dark in the corridor. The walls were paneled from floor to ceiling in heavy wood, and all the schools she had ever attended had at one time served for some other purpose. This one, her aunts had told her, was a former country estate house. Never in her life had she sat in the normal sort of classroom she was always reading about in books. A large rectangular room with a row of gray steel lockers along one wall, and on another ceiling-high windows that had to be opened and closed with a pull. She had never known anything but irregular rooms with bricked-up fireplaces, window seats, alcoves, linen closets, and, once, a whole company of naked, plastered cherubs dancing around the light fixture on the ceiling. And instead of gray steel lockers, coat hooks in the wood paneling of the corridors. She leaned against the wall and settled her head between Alyssa and Barbara. Alyssa with the curly black hair and Barbara with a single braid. Alyssa, who would show her to her desk and be her partner in line, and Barbara, who would carry her notebook. Alyssa, who would gather all the other girls close to her over the scattering of jacks on the pavement and pass secret notes across her desk to Barbara, who would whisper her name in the corridor and imitate her walk. Alyssa, who, with the point of her black pen, would draw a large X on the back of Maggie's blouse, and Barbara, who would squeeze out a scribble of glue across the seat of her desk. Maggie turned now to the smooth green sleeve of Alyssa's lovely jacket, and grasping it tightly in both hands, contorted it into a violent burning twist. Tighter and tighter she twisted it until, when it would turn no more, she let it snap back like a sprung coil. Next, she moved to Barbara's sleeve, twisting it sharply to the back of the neck hole and pressing its cuff against the collar until she could almost hear a squeal of pain issue from the missing head. Down the row she went, twisting one sleeve after another into vicious knots until they all swung limply like the broken swing on its single rope. Any minute now, a classroom door would open, and the teacher would step out into the corridor. "Our new classmates are all looking forward to meeting you, Maggie," she would say, smiling. But Maggie would no longer be there. The long corridors were confusing, and some of the stairways led only to dead ends. In time, Maggie found herself standing on a fire escape, 3 floors above the ground. She clutched the railing and looked down at the playground below. Everything lay in a geometric design. A circle of dodgeball players, a square of box ball, a triangle of girls huddled over a throw of jacks, a set of parallel lines on either side of a volleyball net, a baseball diamond. Only she, Maggie, high above on the fire escape, was part of no shape, and she remained alone, a single point, with her hands wrapped on the iron rail. The air was cold and the wind whipped her thighs, making them quiver. "What's that?" the backwoods girls asked, for she had called them to her, and they all crowded along the railing. "That's my playground. I'm letting those children play in it while I'm not using it." "Ooh, what's a playground?" "It's a place where you go to play games." "Ooh, how wonderful. Can we play?" "Maybe later, when everybody's gone. Not now." "Tell us what they're playing." "Over there, in the circle, there." "Look!" a voice cried out from below, and suddenly the playground was frozen still. "It's the new girl up on the fire escape." In the next moment, the geometric designs had broken into 100 splinters, and Maggie could hear footsteps on the stairs inside. "How come you ran away?" "They were crowding the door that led to the fire escape." "You're not allowed out here." "They've been looking all over for you." "You're supposed to go to the principal's office. She said to send you there." "What are you staring at?" "What are you looking at me like that for? You better come in. You're not supposed to be here. Stop looking like that." "How come she's staring like that? Why doesn't she say something?" "Maybe she doesn't speak English." "Maybe she doesn't speak at all." "Maybe she's crazy." "Hey, she's wearing my hat." "Hey, give me back my hat." "Hey, she spat at me." "Hey, stop that." Maggie waited on the fire escape until they had all gone. She leaned once more over the railing, watching them come out in ones or twos to take up their positions again on the playground, and realizing with some satisfaction that for the first time ever she had managed to skip entirely the brief period when everyone would try to be nice.